You're strong.
I know.
It's okay. I've got you now.
Just like in the movies.
Welcome to SuperWonder Legacy, the only show that knows that Tom King's Wonder Woman is an insult to everything that came before it. I am Jared. I'm here with Britt. What's up, Britt?
Hello, hello.
And today we are talking about our favorite Wonder Woman runs and stories. So it's going to be like mainly stories taken from some runs, and we'll talk about the general runs as we go on. But so starting off, you guys know if we're talking about like the best Wonder Woman runs, we got to start with George Perez, because that's the run that really set the tone for post-crisis Wonder Woman going forward, and that in many ways really saved the character.
Exactly. And with, of course, every time we research things, you get that sense of knowing that, wow, these characters, even being, almost 90 years old, they are very surface level with exploration. And to this day, present day, I would say that Perez was the closest to really do a deep dive of and balancing out Diana with, her divinity, and also that, well, in that time it was the 80s. So I would say that present 80s, vibe, and in that 80s world, you got that sense that she belonged there. Um and just that experience of an immigrant, and and on a fantastical level. And that is why this run is the golden standard for Wonder Woman, because it really, you can feel how much he loved her character. You can feel how much he appreciated her lore, her world, and just knowing her and understanding her. And that's pretty much why we always say that it doesn't matter the gender of the writer. It's just how they feel about the character. Do they understand the character? How, do they have love for the character? And it's not like, yeah, Tom King and using the character to drive a plot that doesn't fit them. So with this run, yeah, it's giving you very much the deep dive that you need for Wonder Woman, and knowing her as this young spirit, knowing the Amazons and their history, and it has its flaws. It has this certain plot points that hasn't aged well, but at the same time, but you can pretty much just really just brush that under the rug and love this run, because it really is a celebration of Wonder Woman and
And that's
her
true.
world.
And think about it this way. The way I think of the Perez run, particularly nowadays, is that it is the antithesis to King's Wonder Woman. It's the Bizarro King's Wonder Woman, because here's the thing. If you notice, it does the complete opposite of everything King does, such as, like, it focuses on Diana. Like, the love interests are not like the main parts of the story. They do play a part in it, don't worry, when they do show up. But what Perez did is he didn't make Wonder Woman wholly dependent on her love interests. What he did was he made it so she could stand alone without them, because that's the problem that King pointed out but didn't do anything about, is that the problem with a lot of Wonder Woman runs is that they focus on the villains, or they focus on the love interest, and don't necessarily focus on making Diana her own character. And that's what Perez did because, like you said, he loved the character. And that's the thing. If you love the character so much, then you 100% can do that. And that's the problem. It's like when you look at Perez, remember, he was the first Wonder Woman writer in like a while that wanted to write the character. It wasn't necessarily a gig for him. He wanted to write Wonder Woman. And that's why I say, like, when you look at writers like Jeremy Adams and such, when you have a writer that wants to write the character, you get Perez work. Whereas for King, he didn't want to write the character, and he's been clear on that. Which it's one of those things where I'm like, that's why, to Britt's point, when you deal with like people that say that only women should write Wonder Woman, and I'm like, okay, let's talk about that for a second, because if only women are allowed to write Wonder Woman, you further limit the amount of people that can write for her. And then if they had that same attitude, you wouldn't have a Perez Wonder Woman or a Rucka Wonder Woman, all the runs that you guys really like.
Exactly, because I mean, we've seen some female writers, and they just do not hit the mark with Wonder Woman, or even just female characters in general. I think there was the Power Girl run, the current or recent run. You have Harley Quinn. Um, I think Fire and Ice that's currently running.
Yeah.
Um, you know, even Lois, that she had a backup in Action Comics, and
Everyone
that was
hated
written.
it.
Yeah, that was written by a woman, and she was talking about the ups and downs of marriages. If that is the ups and downs of marriages, then that is a very toxic marriage, and you definitely need a divorce from that. Um, but yeah, it was really like with you need to have a writer, like you said, that want to write these characters, and especially the female characters, because yeah, they are, or they seem like accessories, and they seem like they are in this sort of stereotypical bubble. Even if being a love interest, you're a glorified love interest like Lois. If you are a main female character like Wonder Woman, it's like they limit her. And no, you don't focus on her love interest or her villains. Honestly, that happened in, I would say, really pre-crisis mostly. Yeah, she didn't have a love interest, a set love interest in post-crisis, but her main problem was Steve in pre-crisis. So for King to say that, and it's like he is trying to not only like do better or challenge Perez run, with bringing Steve back and all of that, but also he said that he was trying to pay homage to like pre-crisis, and it's like that's your problem. You were trying to give that pre-crisis feel to Wonder Woman, and that was problematic at that time,
Yeah,
especially with.
exactly. Because remember, that was the period when they took her powers away.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you had some fun stories with that. Even King wrote that with, I think it was the 80th anniversary when
Hmm.
she had the date with Clark, but he made it out to be this long, drawn out, very corny joke about Clark dresses up like a cop, or he is like a cop. And it was like that, no, that didn't go over well.
Long and
Um,
drawn out. That definitely does not describe every single thing King writes.
right. And Pre-Crisis has its gems, it does, but at
Particularly
the
if you're
same.
a Batman and a Green Lantern fan.
um it, especially the earlier golden age,
Hmm.
Wonder Woman, you
Hmm.
do have certain issues that can stand out.
Hmm.
However, if you want to look at the problem that Diana has, it does stem from her, after Marston was trying to elevate Steve to be like just her sole motivation and the purpose of her story, and that's the same thing King is doing. And that's why modern times, not only because of modern times, but it's that was a problem back then, and you are pretty much putting that problem um in present time. So,
Exactly.
and the fact that he's not trying to listen to fans that are voicing this is very pig-headed, very
Let's
stubborn.
Tom King. Remember, this is the man that wrote a parody to Frank Miller in his book. But
True.
the other thing that really makes the Perez run special, I am partly glad that they didn't do the Superman Wonder Woman date like plot line. Here's why. Because Britt, what's one of the critiques that people say about Superman and Wonder Woman together?
Was one.
I'll
Okay,
give you a
so
hint. It has something to do with her being his girlfriend.
thinking that he was going to overshadow her, but
Yes. Now, the thing about this is why I was okay, why I'm kind of okay with it doing here, because the way I kind of see it is let Wonder Woman establish her own world properly first, because that way she has this great world. It's less likely that that could ever be a concern. Then once her world is like really built up, like it was around this time period, then you can possibly explore that. Because here's the thing. Here's what I want to repeat about the Perez run. It made it so Diana can stand on her own.
yeah, and here's the thing. Whether you have her standing on her own or not, they're still going to complain that she's
Oh yeah.
reduced to the girlfriend because look at what happened in Crisis.
And they totally forget that if she's dating Cheetah, she would be Cheetah's girl. She would be reduced to being Cheetah's girlfriend. Ha!
Right. I mean, any relationship Diana is in, it would reduce her to that. So it honestly is a double standard and just something to complain about. But Perez is one that, just like in the Crisis animated movie, Clark, she wasn't his girlfriend. She was um, the driving force. He was basically her support. And that's the same thing that Perez was establishing. You know, whether they got together or not, he was still her support. He was her confidant that she went to. And someone that, yeah, they had feelings for each other, but again, they were establishing a friendship. And that honestly, the pattern in Wonder Woman stories and the ones that actually stand out are the ones where Superman is featured and he's featured as just her support and her
Mhm.
best friend.
Yeah,
Even as a romantic interest, he still does not take up any type of space that should be with Diana.
yeah,
King, on the other
exactly.
hand, honestly, he's the only one that makes it where the story is geared to more of a Superman perspective. But every other story that um, we're going to talk about and does have Superman featured, it is emphasized that he is just a support. And honestly, the fans who fear that or say that, oh, she'll be reduced, honestly, that shows that you don't read. And yes, you want to be precautious, and DC does have the tendency to do things like that. But with Wonder Woman, it's not a thing when she's with Clark.
Well, yeah, and also adding on to the fact that so the thing is, again, I'm going to play the old Uno reverse card. A lot of the people that say that she's reduced to Clark's girlfriend are the same people that want her with Steve Trevor. And if anything, King is showing us that she is being reduced.
Right. Either you want her with Steve or you want her with Batman. And mostly it will be, oh, Batman because she can clean up Gotham or
Or
she
Batman
can,
because it's in the cartoon series.
yeah. And what happens there in DCAU? Her world is not explored. She's not she stands out in a certain extent, but not really. She doesn't have those um in- with her and Hawk Girl. They have this antagonistic relationship because they are the only two females on the team for the time. And it just Diana in that series was not a girl's girl. She was not about much of sisterhood as she's supposed to be. It really was that she um was focused on being like having a date for Batman. And then with Steve, what King is doing is having her and the fact that he is so egotistical to um admit it, to say that he believes that Steve is the heart of Wonder Woman's story and he's the reason why she becomes Wonder Woman and comes to man. No, absolutely not. So for anyone to say that it's with Clark, and yeah, we've seen it and we've voiced it, it's mostly on, I would say, the Superman side because they want to uphold the status quo with the marriage and having Lois as a love interest, and even with Lana, she has the same issue, or um, Lori or Maxima. All of these other potential love interests for Clark are stepping stones for Lois. So that's still not in the same category. In Wonder Woman's own story, Clark is always the support for her.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of Wonder Woman being obsessed with Batman, the Greg Rucka. I just you always give me such great transitions, Britt. So we're particularly talking about Eye of the Gorgon, which that was like in my mind the best story of that entire run was the Eye of the Gorgon because it involves Wonder Woman fighting the Medusa and dealing with like because when you read Medusa's mythological history, yeah, it's kind of triggering. But so then you have what this also shows me that like anyone upset about Wonder Woman killing in the Snyderverse, I'm like, she literally chopped off Medusa's head. Also, this is the birth of Britt and Mai's favorite Wonder Woman eye color.
Yes. One more thing about Perez I want to
Oh yeah.
emphasize on is that he emphasizes on the mother and daughter relationships, with Julie and Vanessa paralleled with Diana and Hippolyta. That's another thing that King is screwing up on with Vanessa, and how Vanessa was that little sister that Diana never had, because with growing up as the only child on the island, and she was the little sister at that time. So for her to have basically someone to look up to her and be so close, and then that tragedy of being like a disappointment, and Vanessa becoming Silver Swan, that is a it, it's of just the way Perez presented these plot lines. Again, some of them, like with Hercules, it didn't age well, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, those types of relationships with Hippolyta and Diana, and uh, compared to Julian and Vanessa, that is what we need more emphasis on, of those um, mother daughter relationships, of those female empowerment type relationships, and just showing how the Amazons are, they what they went through of being victims, reincarnated, and how it's it's paradise, but at the same time they still have struggles. They still have these ways that they aren't just isolated or, in seclusion just for the heck of it. They, have a reason to, and they aren't barbarians or anything. They aren't um man haters. They want to have they want to protect Earth, because they are Earth women. They are human. So that is also what I love about Perez, is that he made sure that, yeah, these women are of reincarnated souls. They are of the divine. However, they are still human earth um, women. And yeah, so that's all I had to add to
All
that.
right. So Greg Rucka, see again. So this basically has Diana go up against a fight with Medusa, and first she does the whole Perseus thing of using her shield, but then she realizes that she can't do this anymore. So she literally cuts off one of Medusa's snakes and burns her eyes with the venom.
Yeah, that was definitely a Wonder Woman. Like, if I do give Rucka, I criticize it a lot because just um it, some of his writing, especially because of the second run with Rebirth, it was very mean spirited,
Oh yeah.
and it it was unnecessary. And the way he wrote Diana, she just did not give off this Diana. If you
Mm-hmm.
want to go back to post crisis and want her to go back to this type of characterization, you should have did that. And but you wanted to basically stick it to New 52, and yeah, New 52 Diana wasn't the diplomat yet. She wasn't shown that yet. However, she was still young. She was 23, you know. And the way that they was that you had writers who again didn't understand her. The only writer of New 52 that actually wanted to give us that classic Perez type feel, or you know, that post crisis feel of Diana being a diplomat, was Soul. You know, that was he was the only writer who was trying to give that, especially how he is the one who pretty much gave a better reason of why Diana is the god of war, or the goddess of war. So
Yeah.
yeah, Rucka being so mean spirited because he didn't like Clark and Diana's relationship being romantic wise. He already has a hard time, I guess, with them with their friendship because he wants Diana to be play besties with Batman. But I guess them being even with in a romantic entanglement really just threw him off. Um, he was even like that in post during this time of post crisis when I think it's Chuck Austin
Mm-hmm.
when he was doing Action Comics, and there's a story I think where Clark gets beat up by multiple villains, and he's in the hospital. Diana's sitting on the edge of the bed,
I
and
know what story you're talking about.
right. And Superboy Connor asks her, does she love him? And she says, of course. But you can tell it was a very much a bait and switch, or just like this Diana, as always, being used as a mouthpiece to say, yeah, I can love him, but I love him as a friend, and men and women can be friends, da da da. But you can tell that that was very much the writer's thing, and trying to force that in. And that was pretty much on Rucka as well, because he basically went to Austin and was like, no, Diana isn't going to be uh, basically tangled up in the whole Clark with Lana and Lois and then Diana. But I mean, it's a fun thing, it was very harmless. The way it was written, um, with that friendly flirting type thing, it wasn't
Plus,
anything.
you also had Diana in a very sexual pose. I'm like,
Yeah,
she's practically falling out of the costume.
yeah, that's true. It again of that time, it's very things that age like milk powder,
Hmm.
is going to be a little tough. However, just Clark and Diana's back and forth relationship of will they, won't they, or these underlying romantic feelings for each other, but knowing that they can't be together because whether it's out of putting duty first, or Clark being married, it was still the fact that it's just there, and it's something that writers, they can bring it up innocently from time to time, be ambiguous, or something like that. But to try to shut it off because you have your own preference or because you want to protect a status quo that's obviously very,
Defunct.
yeah, and can't hold on its own without uh ruining other dynamics. I mean, that's on you. That you're putting more energy on that. If you go naturally and just have them as friends and just let it naturally flow, that'll be so much better as far as storytelling. So yeah, I the reason why I have an issue with Rucka and very critical is because of that. He
Me too.
has this mean spirit, uh, or be mean spirited about Clark and Diana's relationship. Ironically, though, he does have the reference of their friendship, but you can tell that he still wants to just have it as that. It's just, and even with issue uh, 226, it was basically about their friendship and their history up until that point, before sacrifice. And again, sacrifice was very mean spirited because you ruin their friendship when it's it's always built on trust and to understand each other. And even though they may do things that one or the other is questioning, it's still that they take that time in a mature manner to talk about it, with each other to understand why did you have to do that. So that is pretty much why we are rewriting sacrifice with shelter, because it's like, no, this is very in
It's
out of
not
character.
realistically what would happen.
Yeah, and yeah, you want drama, but we know why you wanted that drama is to ruin their friendship for another, to try to force another friendship that still does not exist with Batman and Wonder Woman. So
And never will exist. But that's the other thing. But anyway, so onto this. I think that, like, again, one of the cool parts about this is that this is, when you think about it, the other time Wonder Woman killed someone and no one had a problem with it.
and honestly, it's only because they see Medusa as a monster. They don't see her as a woman, basically cursed. If you are your your outer look, you know, and they're not seeing the inner part. So that's another thing that we explore in Shelterverse is with this is the double standard that even though Maxwell Lord looked human, like a human male, his inside was very monstrous.
Hmm.
So that's the thing that's also that could have been something explored, and but they didn't do it because you were more focused on the destruction of a relationship than having that deep philosophical type exploration with this story. Both stories could have been paralleled, could have connected, and because Diana does something that's so extreme, but with the positiveness of Rucka, he did give us Ambassador Diana that we need. That really shows
Hmm.
her as that diplomat, and we did see how to truly have that balance of the ambassador and the warrior of peace. We did have that. And also, yeah, that the gem of her having the eyes of Athena, the gray eyes, silver eyes, that is just, I love that design for her.
Yeah, exactly. And then going on to the diplomat, when they the thing I really liked about the Rucker run is that he very much expanded on the embassy thing to the point where her embassy staff actually became characters in and of themselves, so it really made you care about these people.
Exactly. You know, even though Diana, I still see her as a global hero. She's not just set in one spot. The same thing I feel that Superman, he should not be set in one spot. Metropolis can be the home base for Diana. Washington or Boston can be her home base, but they are very much global heroes to where they do have an established supporting cast, It's kind of like you have your intermediate family, you know. And then but at the same time you expand it to where you do have like this rotation and you have these new characters that come up, but you still care for them, you know. And that's we got that a little bit with here. Um is that you still saw Steve. And what's funny also is how Steve was in this book and obviously married to Ada. And yet for Rucka to go for basically to have the post crisis Steve and then you write Rebirth and have him as a love interest. Again, was that not clicking of how weird that is?
Well,
Is that
again,
not
it's called being petty.
Yeah, it just seems so weird to me that they want to go back to post-crisis, but still nitpicking. And that is one of the things that is kind of unsettling to think that, if you're going to talk about Perez run and praise it and that was the one thing that stood out even more so of that change of dynamic with Steve too, of him calling Diana his little sister and then him
Mhm.
being, you know, at least whether he's calling her little sister or he's very much a father figure, he was still old enough to be basically her, you know, if you want to give her a dad, her dad, you know, and
Papa Steve.
and to now try to force him as a love interest, and that was the status quo for 30 plus years, and to now try to make it seem like he's just this the love of her life and stuff is very weird to me. I don't agree with that. It's very unsettling, um because that was the status quo. And again, if you're going back to post crisis now, um, that should be a thing too of having Steve as that big brother type figure. Also, even with if they want to have him in wartime too, I saw someone say that uh, Steve, the first Steve, was in wartime and this might be Steve Jr. That's still weird. Is no way to make Steve work as a character unless you have him as that big brother figure.
Yeah, that doesn't really work. But then you also have issue 226 that deals with Clark and Diana.
Right. This is where you have their friendship. Like I said, it's expanding and you see, you know, glimpses of the with Julie and Vanessa. You see them talking about them as like this tabloid couple, that the public thinks of them as a couple, but personally, they know that they aren't a couple and they have this friendship, but at the same time, you still get that feeling of that underlying, well, it's not that simple. It's very complicated of them, again, having those romantic feelings and trying to bury them, but they've built this very strong friendship. And to have that issue and then go about it of ruining, that was established there is something so beautiful. A lot of these fans and writers talk about um, um, the friendship between uh, men and women. And yet, when it is something that is genuine, you ruin it.
Mhm.
It doesn't make sense to me, and again, yes, they are going to have this romantic underlying tension because that's how it's been since pre-crisis. This is just there. You don't have to truly explore it to the depths because of the status quo, but just kind of like, again, it's just a natural thing. When we write Clark and Diana, if they're not together yet, um, they still just have that friendly flirtation that's so innocent and so just something that's not so serious to be to get up in arms about, you know.
Exactly. So, speaking of getting up in arms, so we have Immortal Wonder Woman. I bring this up because of because of Bartel and how she faced backlash for drawing an art piece of Superman and Wonder Woman hugging, just them hugging. But anyway, for this, what I love about this is this book, yes, it gave hints at Clark and Diana, but again, this basically shows how Diana gets really lonely after being immortal, and it shows like on the next slide I have the other picture of this. Diana's, for lack of a better term, sacrifice and her ability to the world comes first. In other words,
Right. This story really showed that Diana is it's a full circle for her because she if you want to go with the clay origin and how again the reincarnation and her being she was created by love, you know, love from her mother, and it goes to a spiritual um in a spiritual context. This is the same thing. Diana, yes, she's lonely and just like she was on the island as the only child, but she with her power, she is able to create a new world and a new to start the story over. And she also, yeah, the immortality thing, that's pretty much why I don't like her being in wartime because it just seems so sad for her. And that's not that's not who Diana is. She is supposed to be in present day. And if you want to have her immortal, just have it present on forward. And she will still
or
have,
here's what you do: you literally just don't even address it. Just say that she can live for a long time. We don't know how long.
yeah, I mean, in Post Crisis or Kingdom Come, it was when she basically forfeited her immortality when she got pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So if she decides to have a child, then, her, let's say her immortality is forfeited, but she still, it seemed like she lived up to 500 years still. Mm,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Around that time period, yeah.
around, but still, she still lives long. It's just that's it. But you still see that her natural lifespan. Again, you're having these characters still as human-hearted, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
and then but they are fantastical and divine. But they still have such these innocent, pure hearts. And that is what Diana has and displays here. She is not being like this queen of everything. She isn't thinking of herself as some type of conqueror or uh relishing in the fact that she's immortal. She is you feel her loneliness. And also even with Clark, they are basically the last two standing. And that is a full circle because if you want to think of Clark and Diana as these gods, they never want to be that. That is a burden that they both share. And multiple times, that's been addressed. They don't see themselves as gods. Fans want to think that them being paired together, they'll be above. But actually, in story, when reading the content, it says no, they are not gods. Even here, Diana says they are given the title of being a god, but they never wanted that. And that is something that they always have this inner conflict and this fear that one day they will have to face that. That, yeah, we are blessed with these gifts, but they also feel like a curse at times. And they have to deal with that. And this story, it sort of deals with that. But she makes it so inspiring again when she feels like she's going to rewrite her story. And this also goes into the Crisis animated movie when Diana, again, she has this inner conflict of her immortality, and she wants to do something more of giving life. She was given life, you know, much more that she felt like even she really deserved. So she wanted to give life back.
Exactly. And speaking of giving life back, then we get the dope image of she does the Zack Snyder thing of clanging her bracelets together, but she essentially reboots the universe, which then again is like, how powerful is this woman?
Exactly. And honestly, DC should show how powerful she is. I'm so tired of Diana being, nerfed. And especially even the lasso too. Just her whole arsenal and everything. Diana is supposed to be on par with Clark or even more powerful than him because if you want to say that a god is he rivals a god, okay. But Diana is gifted and blessed by the god. She is, powered by God. So in multiple at that, she should be, more powerful than Superman. I'm sorry, but that logistically to me, that is how it should go. But we don't see that enough because she's a woman. And it would give the writers like can I say his name?
All right.
Like Tomasi, make, feel intimidated. And it's honestly unnecessary and because you can explore so much with that, even if Diana is powerful, she still wants to be, with the people though, and the same thing with Clark. It's just when it comes to stories like this, or when it comes to, um, I guess, bigger threats to write and be like go all out with the threats and stuff, then yeah, show their ability at its fullest.
Exactly. And by real quick before I move on to the next book, this also continues the grand tradition of Conrad trying to hint at Superman and Wonder Woman, but and he's trying to be subtle, but the problem is it's like that meme from Princess Bride. You keep saying that word. I don't think you know what it means because this ain't subtle, brother. It's like I
Right.
assure you, Clark knows a thing or two about having his hands dirty.
Yeah, it's
The fact that she says "I assure you" that makes it even worse.
yeah, that does make it worse. That makes it so much worse.
So speaking of innuendo again, black and gold, because you have Hippolyta going, "Oh, is Clark your boyfriend?" I
Yes,
also love how the password is Diana. The Wi-Fi password on Themyscira is Diana Baby Girl.
this story. So Black and Gold is it was 6 issues, and but it was so fun and lighthearted, with different talents and except for Tomasi's story because that was it with the whole Diana being the warrior woman, when she's with Clark. Clark is not mentioned in this story. That is just how Tomasi writes her as a warrior woman. And that's something that fans really need to distinguish too. That is not the pairing, is again how writers interpret her, even as her solo, you know. Um she's in her solo now and Tom King is choosing to sideline her in her own book. So no, it's not the pairing, it is the writer's choice. With this, um, like I said, besides Tomasi's story, every other story is very unique and it stands out and it has this emotional um resonance to it.
Well,
And
like
it
also,
just
I love the one at the bottom right where that person goes, "Oh, he's just an arrogant, muscle-bound thug." It sounds like someone you know, and then Diana's like, "Shut up."
Yeah, that's Cersei. That story, Cersei turns Clark into a guinea pig. So Diana has to go. She's looking for him, and she sees that it's Cersei, and she is she see Odysseus, and I guess the story of that love story with Cersei. And it's kind of funny that they try to give a parallel or a or to that story with Cersei to Diana and Clark. Um, but yeah, she act when she sees Clark comes, he's like in a hamster ball too. So it even more so just it's very cute and funny.
That just gave
And
me an idea.
I know it did. Turning Clark into a guinea pig is just so hilarious.
Hmm.
Um, so she asks her, she's like, couldn't you have, you know, turned him into something more dignified? And Cersei is just amused by this. And of course, she, I believe she promises Diana that she wouldn't do it again, but of course, she crosses her fingers. It's kind of like she's not keeping that promise. Once they leave, she throws the ball into the air and he, returns back to normal. And he says, and Clark says not to mention this to anyone else. But yeah, it's just a, a very fun little story. And then the one mother and daughter, when Hippolyta is ill, Diana has to come. And the way that they design is very much in a sitcom type way.
Hmm.
So they have the mascara as kind of like a regular neighborhood. So it's like a regular house with the garage and everything like that.
Yeah, I was about to
Um,
say that kitchen looks very regular.
yeah, the kitchen is very regular. Everything is regular. It's so funny. Um, and Diana, because she rushed over to Hippolyta, she has to put on like her child clothes. So
Hmm.
so it's very small for her, but Hippolyta think is really really cute. She's very annoying. Purposely, with Diana wanting to be like this needy mother that wants to be around her daughter. In turn, once Hippolyta feels a little bit better, Diana starts to get sick. And it's up to Hippolyta to take care of Diana. And she really just wants to baby her. And she is annoying because she hears Diana on the phone and Diana of course says Clark's name. So Hippolyta asks through the door, is Clark your boyfriend? Just those little moments of being
It's
a
so
mother.
funny. You wouldn't think a story like this would work so well. Like this concept of it being like a sitcom and Themyscira looking like a regular neighborhood. It shouldn't work, but it does.
It does, because this is the type of thing that you like. Clark and Diana are multifaceted type characters, and they have that type of relationship as well.
Well, not only that,
They're
Britt, this shows don't no one tell me that Wonder Woman's hard to write for.
right. You can have so much fun with different concepts and different genres. You can place them in these different type scenarios, and it does work. You know, we're not saying just go over the top, out of character, Tom King. We're saying like something that makes sense, that is so fun, but it still has that heart of who Wonder Woman is.
You
And
know,
this is
it
the type.
still feels like Wonder Woman again, and we'll talk about this when we get there. This is why Absolute Wonder Woman astounds me. The setting could not be more different, but it still feels like Wonder Woman.
Right. So yeah, with having like I said, Hippolyta, so funny. It honestly reminds you of those old like an episode of Bewitched maybe, or yeah, I would say Bewitched, something like that. Or maybe those new age sitcoms of, mother and daughter. But this is something that we really need more of
Yes.
Hippolyta and Diana just being mother and daughter and having fun. That would be so unique and, like I said, just something that DC needs.
I would love if Politics starts guilt tripping Diana into doing things for her. It's like if we're going with the clay origin, she goes, "I molded you from clay for hours with carpal tunnel. You can get me a glass of water."
Oh my
Or
God.
in the case of like the Zeus origin, do you have any idea how it feels to birth a demigod into this world? We need to use that, by the way, Britt.
Of course.
That would be so great if they did that. And then we also get these dope stories where like Diana reunites a couple, and with the black and gold aesthetic, where she's shining like a goddess, and her whole body is like shining gold like Apollo,
Yes.
except not punched by Superman.
Hilarious.
I love it. I love those because there was a period where like a lot of the publishers were doing these black and blank colors. Like they had black and red for Wolverine, where it
Yes.
was all like red. And for a occasional novelty, it really works. Particularly, it makes everything pop so well.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And I also like, by the way, again, how the invisible jets also gold.
Yeah. Honestly, when DC tries, they can manage to do something unique. And these, uh, whatever blank color, type anthologies, they work and they show, like I said, when you have these anthologies with multiple talents and, um, yeah, the artwork may vary in some cases, but in the writing too. But overall, it's just having fun and showing that these characters again can be put in different scenarios and it works.
Which, speaking of that, they had Batman the world and they had Superman the world. Maybe we'll have Wonder Woman the world.
They definitely are going to have one of those for Wonder Woman if we ever get, like, I guess maybe Paradise Lost or the new
Yeah,
um Wonder Woman that's cast.
because I do know we're already getting like one of those the age books, but for Wonder Woman. In other words, like but Batman Dark Ages, Superman Space Age. And we're getting
Yeah,
one for Wonder Woman, so it's only a matter of time before we get one of those. Because I would love like having creators from different parts of the world give their take on like Wonder Woman, because they did that for like Joker and Batman, and that was fascinating, just seeing how different like creatives interpret this character. Watch, the one from Japan is just a continuation of Yakuza League.
that would be amazing.
Because again, I still say that is the best. That's the best animated Wonder Woman we have gotten in years.
Yeah.
But anyway, so then we get Sensation Comics featuring Wonder Woman, which pretty dope. I actually have one of the trades for Sensational. I have Sensational Wonder Woman, so maybe that's a different one. But Britt and I have referenced this series where Superwoman / evil Lois Lane, funny how that ends up, huh? Is taunting Diana. I just love that. And then there's the one where Diana's being interviewed by Lois, and then and then at a certain point, you could tell Wonder Woman is going, "Get me out of this."
Yeah, again, like Black and Gold, the this one is a multitude of talent, and they, again, the writing and the art may vary. However, you still get that sense of Diana, and it's very fun, and there's moments where you get where it shows that some of the writers know about Clark and Diana's history, or that ambiguity that they want to have in that sort of way. So with this, you see on the right corner where she says she needs a massage by
Mhm.
um, from Kara's cousin. Uh,
I just read the dialogue. Okay, so for those at home, the dialogue says, "Oh, the shoulder. Supergirl's cousin does only a super massage." Oh, I very well bet that. And then watch Clark hears that, and his heartbeat it starts picking up. He goes, baseball cold showers.
Funny. Um, and then you have the story that it is, I forgot the writer, but he also did the illustration and he had a model be Wonder Woman. It was basically like a day.
Didn't we cover that story at one point?
Yes,
I
it's
knew
like
that
a,
art looked familiar.
yeah, it's like a day in the life type redo with Clark Kent. And this story, again, it shows how Clark is learning from Diana. He's seeing Diana's perspective of life, of things, of how she um, is herself, and also how they have that understanding of these two being two, yes, they're powerful and divine, but they are lonely. They do have certain doubts or or fears or something like that. They do have emotion. They don't need Lois and Steve to handhold them and try to, make them feel that emotion. They have their own emotions and they talk about it. Whether they have this romantic underlying relationship or they are just friends, but you still have that connection that they have always had. And then, yeah, the Lois interview story. This one is funny because some Lois fans wants to use the ending, but they never uh, mention the beginning. The beginning is where Lois is very antagonistic and kind of being, poking the bear, and you know, and it's not very. They're not friends, you know. Lois and Diana have never been friends. They aren't friends. The only time they're friends is when, again, they want to uphold the status quo. So this pretty much showed that. And by the end, what it was showing was that Diana basically still had respect for Lois. And um, you have where she leads to be basically take the high road and try to be cordial. So you do have where Diana calls Lois like a sister and a wonder or whatever. But it's like, yeah, you want that, but it feels so contrived. It really does. So this story, I would say that they could use the back half of it because they want to have this, oh, we're try to be friends, at the end. But that beginning part is what's real. And especially when Lois is entangled in a lasso and she says that she's insecure around Diana. We see that multiple times, even in post crisis, and even in Death of Superman animation, where Diana had to be a mouthpiece, and then also one more, um Superman Lost, um and in Rebirth, when the Trinity book, where Diana says that they can be sisters, that her, the Clark that she loved is gone, or whatever she said. It's
Hmm.
still the fact that, again, Diana is the one that is used as the mouthpiece, basically, to pet Lois because of her own her jealousy and insecurity. And
Yeah. The reason why I like excuse that one is that compared to the pettiness that DC was at that time period, Manipul could have been a lot more petty, but he wasn't at least.
true, true, but it's still, I mean, you
It's still
still had,
petty. It's still petty, but at the very least, compared to oh no, Lois, it feels true. This seems
yeah,
very tame.
yeah, it was. And then you have the one where Lois is Superwoman, and
Here we
that
go.
little moment of Diana, you have that it's not so subtle at all with Superwoman obviously knowing that Diana and Clark are together, and she basically says that she is a temporary joy. And Diana shoots back and say, well, you're basically a thought. So, you know, you basically don't have love like I do. So, you know, I appreciate that very much because it's funny and
Gave me another
it
idea.
I'm sure it did. And for Diana to have Diana is innocent. She's very kind, but at the same time, I need her to have a little bit of snappiness, and she can shoot back. She can get with it. That's how I see her. Is that she will basically throw the shadiest of shade in the nicest way possible.
My
Or
favorite shade that Diana ever gave is when she's fighting Hal Jordan, and she goes, "This is giving me no pleasure, but I'm sure you've heard that before."
things like that. Diana can, again, she can snap back if she wants to, and writers need to give her that. She doesn't need to be this holier than thou stick in the mud, or Diana can, like I said, get with it. So yeah, I appreciate this story because yeah, it was a little bit of the cat fight, type thing, and it was about basically throwing shots at either Superwoman being a thought or Diana wanting Diana to basically feel insecure about her relationship with Clark. Yeah, sure, but it was still funny and fun because it really just showed how, again, the placement of wanting Diana to be like Superwoman, or to be like when Maxima was written as the wanting to just be this space conqueror with having Clark's babies and stuff like that. No, Diana is not like that. Their relationship is very honest, very pure, it has its drama, but it's nothing like that. And it's also nothing of like Superwoman.
Yeah, and then we'll find out that Superwoman's real name is Wandisha.
Hilarious.
There you go. There you go. Then we have JLA League of One, otherwise known as Wonder Woman's Tower of Babel. Again, Britt and I talked about this one, and first off, art is gorgeous. But the thing about this one, it's a Justice League story that's a Wonder Woman story. So that's really interesting how she is one. It also shows don't mess with Wonder Woman because she could take out the entire Justice League.
Yeah. And this honestly should have been the animated movie. If
Mm-hmm.
you're going to do Bloodlines, I just feel like, again, you were trying to just throw something together, and um you're being the mean spirited of going back to half post crisis, half rebirth type status quo, and also try to piggyback off of the 2017 movie, and it didn't work. It flopped basically. If you want a Wonder Woman solo animated movie, it needs to be this.
Or here's what if James Gunn were smart, this could be the Justice League movie.
It should be the Justice League movie, or it should be Wonder Woman's movie. I mean,
Well, that too, but I'm saying that way you can cast all the Justice Leaguers, and then you could have it be pretty much a Wonder Woman movie.
exactly. I mean, this story, it it just really, first, the art is so unique, and
Done.
it gives that mythical vibe of the whole old prophecy, that and you can still see the expressions and everything. It
Here's
just
the
really
cover.
gives that, that elevation to it,
And not only
and
that, by the way, Britt, I read the second story, the one with all the mech suits. That is awesome, by the way, as well.
oh,
Because the trade that I got for my birthday has both.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, so it's really good. But yeah, even at this, it's like particularly the scene when she just drop kicks Superman,
Yeah, that was funny.
and
Honestly,
I love how the last panel is literally looks like they just got married, and there's Batman smiling.
yeah, the
They're
last
holding
panel.
hands as well.
Yeah, the last panel of just that whole sequence of, I mean, Clark's method of CPR is very dramatic
He's
there.
punching her in the chest.
Only only he can punch her in the chest, and only she can basically take the punches in the chest, you know.
That's like in
Um
that movie Duplex where he's trying to give her CPR and he's punching into her chest.
um and to see that emotional, that Clark saying that he would die by her side, that little emotion is so sweet. And again, it's not like he takes away any of the spotlight from her. It's just him being supportive, and it's still
If
very much a
anything,
Wonder Woman story.
in this story, Wonder Woman takes the spotlight away from the whole damn Justice League.
Exactly. And this is the story that, again, why haven't it been adapted? You know, this is the story to adapt, whether it's live action or animated. This needs to be the story. And do not change anything. This needs to be a one-to-one adaptation.
Exactly. So then next up that needs to be adapted is Wonder Woman Spirit of Truth, which by the way I have in the superheroes trade.
Yes. This story, again, you are getting the complexity of Diana. She's trying to find her place. Yeah, it does lean on a little bit more of the divine goddess trying to find her way in the human mortal world. But if you want to go, you know, how we prefer to see it as Diana being more of the immigrant, you know, you can still read it that way as well. And you know, what she's trying to do, she's not trying to control or just change the world in a utopia type sense. She's just trying to do things better. And some people don't want to change. Some people fear the change. Some people don't. Even if she has helped them, they still don't trust her. You see her as a diplomat again, and you see her doing robberies, saving children. You see her in all these different scenarios, and she still feels in this sense of misunderstood and this unfulfilling type way. So she has to basically change her point of view and change something of how she go about things and don't rush it. She has to really just relish in those moments. And she also goes back to the mascara, and we see that, you know, of all the things that she does, she is just a girl from an island. She's an island girl, and she's one with nature and everything like that. And then again, you have this moment where she's with Clark and she's asking him basically, how do you do it? How do you um, have the secret identity and be able to not stand out, basically? And I don't really like too much of the, be one of them, as in like actively the whole mental gymnastics of choosing one identity of the other. I like the more of it's not being one of them, it's just everything is blending in together. Like everyone has their unique culture, and everyone is, doing their own thing, but that's what makes the world.
Plus, it's called having a balance. That's kind of the way this works. By the way,
Exactly.
this book wins my award for most creative use of the invisible jet because it just looks like she's standing on like thin air. Or when she meets with Clark, I
and
don't
it's
know
raining.
how Alex Ross does it, but it's like the rain is like highlighting the jet. And I'm like,
Exactly. That is
what
some,
the hell? In a good
yes.
way.
Yeah, that is very unique. Yeah,
Whereas opposed
definitely.
to Tom King, where it's just she's setting in thin air, and I'm like, that's lame.
Right.
Which is Tom King, so what do you expect?
Um, I think also here she has the gray eyes. I can't really tell, but the
I
way,
can check for you. I have the book. I shall check. It looks either they're gray or they're very light blue. I think they're light blue.
okay, either way, the light blue or the silver is just, it makes Diana just so, it gives her the goddessy look, but at the same time, again, just that the fact that she's so earthly still, that is what we need.
Exactly. So then we get to the book that Britt and I reference every damn episode, Superman Wonder Woman by Charles Sewell. Because again, now here's the thing. This is what I always tell people. Whenever anyone says that like Diana is reduced to like a side character, I'm like, just read this book. It answers all of that.
Right. This is, but of course, no one wants to read.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
this story is very much a balance. And ironically enough, I did see a tweet where someone did read this and they was like, "Oh, this is more of a Superman book because it has Zod and Doomsday." It's like, so are we just gonna
Um,
skip over the gods?
Apollo.
Yeah, are we gonna skip over the gods? Are we gonna skip over the blue snowman? Or we're skipping over that? Or the fact that
Even
Hesha
Tomasi had Cersei.
um and Hesia, are we going to ignore her? You know, the Soul did do as best he could as for balancing the book
Mhm.
because and he said this that at that time, Azzarello was not trying to communicate. He wanted the Wonder Woman book to be isolated, and he was at
You
that
can
time he
tell
was
that.
still doing his own book, and Charles didn't basically didn't want to step over a bound and like if he wanted to do something, it it he didn't want to contradict what Azzarello was doing. So for the limitations it wasn't Soul just trying to make this a Superman book. It was basically because of Azzarello, and people again need to understand this and not only read the book but read the interviews. Read what's actually
But that
told.
requires work, Britt.
It does, but yeah, it wasn't the fault of Soul or anything like that. And even if so, Diana was still very much 50-50. It's not even that. I wouldn't even say 50-50 because Soul still gave us more perspective of Diana. Her inner monologues, her even starting issue 3, I believe, called Reflections, and it was Diana on the mascara. Or no, I'm sorry. Was that issue 5? All right. Um, but yeah, so it was still very much a Wonder Woman book, and again, it's always trying to put the ship down in such an unnecessary way that can be easily debunked. But this story, um, again, shows Diana's vulnerability, shows her maturity, and just shows a healthy balance of a relationship that's just starting. They're starting to um, know more about each other and know how to not only balance themselves, but just balance their relationship and what they want out of it, together and how they can make each other better for them to be the heroes that they want to be.
Exactly. And then, of course, I had to give this its own slide. Superman punches the crap out of Apollo after Apollo shoots him with sunlight. which is the greatest Superman moment of all time. Yes, I said it.
Yeah, it is a good moment because you are basically like, if you want to show how Clark and Diana's relation, how their worlds, I mean, um, join together, having Clark face the gods, and again, he rivals the gods, but actually going through, and he is going to struggle, but at the same time, he is going to have that strength, to be able to hold his own. And going against Apollo is a very unique battle because yeah, Clark is powered by the sun. And then you have the sun god, the actual sun god fighting him. How is that actually going to really them going head to head? Because there's so much of the sun that Clark can absorb to where it might do some type of damage to him. So how can you use that into like an all-out battle between the actual sun god and basically a would-be or a sun god in his own right?
And again, it's very simple. You have the sun god act like an idiot and blast Superman with sunlight.
Right.
I'm sorry. I keep bringing that up. I just love this moment so much
I
because
can
it's
tell.
like, yeah. What did you? And I just love everyone in the New 52 had such sass where Superman's like, you don't know that much about me, do you? And I'm like, oh.
Right. And also, I like that Clark and Diana were again playing with that tabloid celebrity type couple. It really just gave them the reality of who they were and trying to have privacy. But again, it wasn't them being godly and being worshipped. It was them being like a celebrity couple, like whether they are in the music industry or in the acting business, or reality TV. They are just that celebrity couple. And that's something that also can give a little bit more realism and modern, nizing them as individual characters and as a couple.
And then I love the panel where Diana brings him to that dance club, and the guy goes, "The woman's a goddess," and then Clark goes, "You have no idea how true that is."
Right. And the fact that he also said that Diana goes in there, by herself, but she like doesn't want to dance with any other guy, and she never brought any other guy with her, and for Clark to be the first is and the only, but that is something that's really those small moments for them is
And
really
by the
sweet.
way, another idea for me.
Yeah, yeah,
One,
yeah.
two, three. I have 4 ideas so far.
Honestly, I'm starting to get the vibe in knowing when you are going to end up with an idea.
Oh, trust me, I make it very apparent because I'm playing mind games, lady.
Yeah,
So,
I know, I know.
then we get the book that is saving Wonder Woman, Absolute Wonder Woman. And again, this should not work because it's Wonder Woman in hell, but through some magic, pun intended, Thompson manages. So Wonder Woman is raised in hell, and you would think that would turn her into Kratos. And I know Thompson talked about how she tried to do that, but she just couldn't. And I'm like, thank you. But it's literally Diana improves hell. Like hell becomes more homely, and then she's still like in many ways the first public superhero. And I'm like, this is the book that is made by someone that clearly loves the character in the grand tradition of George Perez. Yeah, I said it.
Right, because yeah, as you said it perfectly. Being raised in hell, it didn't change Diana's heart, and what Absolute is doing is, yeah, it's New 52 2.0, maybe in a better terms of being separated from the main universe instead of being the main universe. And also, you know, with if you want Diana to be like this goddess of war, she has to remain herself, um, with the purest of hearts, and she's intimidating to the enemy, but not to the people. And she's still very much approachable and loving, and and also just as you said, she made hell instead of letting it conform her. She conformed hell into being homely, and even Cersei, you know, made her out to be uh more of a mother figure, and that is Diana's role. She is basically a healer. She rehabilitates, her enemies and redeem them. So that's what she's doing, um, as far as being in hell.
Yeah, and then you get to issue 5, I want to say, or 6, where so it shows like her going through the journey and getting all her items. And again, she's like Wonder Woman, where she comes across Prometheus, and his like punishment from the gods is that every night he gets like eaten by ravens. So she persuades some of the ravens to not eat him anymore, so he doesn't have to be in pain anymore. And I'm like, again, that is 100% Diana.
Yes. And yeah, for Thompson to admit that Absolute Wonder Woman was at first supposed to be basically female Kratos. Like that, she's supposed to be, um, you know, really ingrained in the goddess of war type thing. But she couldn't make it work because that's not who Diana is. She's not this warrior woman. And even if, we see that in uh say Kingdom Come, but it's certain circumstances, the way she is pressured, and the conflict of the story makes her, go over the edge. But at the same time, we see that she doesn't want to. It's basically a last resort. And she's very jaded from losing everything and frustrated with everyone around her that has given up, and it's just and so many lives have has been lost. So she feels like she has to go to extreme. But at the end, she's still um very happy, and she ends up still being that, in a sense, moral compass in the right way. And she feels as that frustrated mother for Kingdom Come. Injustice is a total different character. As you said, you want that to be Cersei in disguise, or even
It
Maxima,
was
something like that.
Cersei all along.
Yeah, something like that. Because that's not Diana. Diana is never an evil person. She's never. Yeah, it just feels like you're reading, or or writing, or whatever, a total different character. So no matter the setting, whether it is Diana or Clark, they are to be naturally these characters with hearts of gold. They can go through hell and back, but they still have, and they learn, and they go through the emotions and stuff, but they still um have this redeeming quality, and they are still the inspirations that they are supposed to be for not only the readers, but also just the characters that they are written around.
Yeah, exactly. And then I again, speaking of sass, when Hades goes, "You're not so you can't leave the hell, princess," and then Diana goes, "Yeah, but I did."
Yeah, again, that is the sassiness that I'm talking about. Diana is supposed to have like this. She's very innocent, very sweet and kind, but when she snaps back. And in the, like I said, the politest way, or even, yeah, even in a sarcastic type manner that you can't help but to respect.
Exactly. So then we get to JLA number 105 by Chuck Austin. It's part of the arc called The Pain of the Gods.
Okay, with this, Diana is fighting a random villain. At this point, Hippolyta, I think, is dead or has died. Um, and Diana is going through this fear as she's fighting this villain, that she's going to die. So she's basically having this inner conflict of dying. Um, she goes back to after she defeats the villain. She goes back to the watchtower and she feels like she needs someone to talk about her feelings of how that battle went. Um, John Stewart, he's in Flash. I think it's Wally. They're playing video games and they're not paying attention. So she goes to the break room and Martian Manhunter follows her and he asks her, does she need comforting, basically? And she says yes. And she thinks that she's about to get comforted by Martian Manhunter, but he stops her and he's like, okay, well, Superman is wherever. You can go to him and ask him to comfort you. And he just leaves
And
her.
by the way, this was Wally because Barry didn't come back until actually wait. Barry came back in Final Crisis. Hang on, I'm trying to determine where that was. So this was 2000. Yeah, this was Wally because Barry was dead from Crisis all the way until 2008.
Okay. So yeah, so she she basically wanted to have that comfort, and Martian Manhunter says, Superman is better suited for this, so go find him. So she's left basically in the dark, very surprised at uh, Martian Manhunter's response. So she goes to find Clark, and she is telling him about the battle, and he's just thinking, "Oh yeah, like it is a brutal battle." But then she says, "No, you're not like understanding what I'm saying. I thought that I was going to die." And Clark gets sentimental. He holds her, embraces her, and he says, "You're not gonna really die because I would turn back time, being that I will miss you so much." And Diana says, "That's a great sentiment, but you're not that powerful." And it's a very
And then
awkward.
Clark goes, have you seen my movie?
Yeah. Um, so it's with this it's exploring that conflict, you know, they will make the sacrifice, but at the same time, it is a fear of dying, though. They don't just go out and, again, they're not androids. They have feelings. So for this to explore that, yeah, Diana is a warrior and she will make a sacrifice. But at the same time, she does have those emotions and those thoughts, though, and that fear of dying. And then again, she has that comfort from her best friend. And it doesn't take away anything. It just shows that their closest their closeness and their connection.
Exactly. And that's the thing. And that's because let me be clear. It's like, yes, it would be nice if Clark and Diana were actually together in main continuity, but even if all we got was like them acknowledging their close friendship, I'm pretty sure Britt and I would be very happy with that. Because here's the thing again, because of for some reason, most likely pride, that they may say that like Diana is Superman's best friend, but they barely interact at all.
Exactly. The whole best friend thing is not even it's more so to put them in the friend zone type thing, but to actually explore that and to show that, no, they do not. Especially in the Superman books, again, because they're trying to uphold the status quo. And
Protect
I've
Lois
seen,
at all costs.
Yeah, and I've seen where it's some commenters say Diana can't be his best friend because he has a wife, and his wife is supposed to be his best friend. And it's just kind of like, I mean, yes and no, but at the same time, trying to reduce that relationship that's been established. Lois has never been his best friend. She's a wife, but
She's been his
it's
antagonist, if anything.
yeah. But to say that she's his best friend, honestly, I would say that's not true because Clark holds back a lot from Lois. Even recently, with Williamson writing Lois as Superwoman, he says that now that Lois is Superwoman, she could finally understand Clark as Superman. And it's kind of like, oh, so they've been married for this long and she never understood him as Superman before now of having the powers.
Thank
And
you for admitting that she didn't understand him this whole time.
right.
So,
And
and in a way, Britt, they're kind of admitting that Diana understands him better than Lois does. Ha!
exactly. I mean, even in the bait and switch of Immortal Beloved, you had that too, where at the beginning, Diana asks him, "So you tell me about, the situation, but you don't tell the love of your life." And while Clark says that he doesn't want Lois to be worried, it's also he says that it's different with Diana because there is trust, there is, this openness for him to just be himself with her. With Lois, it's not like that because for so long he has held back from himself from her, um, having a different personality, having to just fake as this klutz or this big glute, type persona. And also just, yeah, she doesn't understand that the way of the superhero life. We saw that with Our Worlds at War as well, of how Lois was saying she want her husband, she just want Clark, she doesn't want Superman, or that um, she wanted Clark to drop everything and save her father instead of save Diana or Hippolyta. It was just things like that through post crisis and even in pre crisis that Lois has not been this in their relationship has not been this um inspirational type uh couple's goal or whatever. They're trying to only by default of you're ruining other relationships, not only friendships, dynamics of Clark and Lana um or Clark and Diana, but also just the fact that they even put other couples down. Like in Superman the World, there was Aquaman and Mira was mentioned is saying how if they would go on vacation or something, they wouldn't be in whatever they're in now. So you're trying to say that what Aquaman and Mira are somehow in counseling, marriage counseling or whatever. Just random things like that. Why do you have to put other relationships down to prop another relationship up?
And that's again why I don't like Lois because that's what it leads to. Either directly or indirectly, Diana always gets the short end of the stick, and not only Diana, but pretty much any other relationship because that's when you know that there's very little to Lois because if she was the central character that could stand on her own or support her own comic series, you wouldn't have to put down other characters in order to prop her up.
Exactly. Exactly. And just like with New 52, there was never oh, Diana being with Clark is better than Steve, or Clark being with Diana is better than Lois. There was never an in story uh character, used as a mouthpiece for that. It was never that. But we see when it comes to trying to prop up Lois and Steve, whether mainly is Diana being a mouthpiece for those relationships. And it shows how insecure you are or that these relationships can't stand on their own. If a
Hmm.
relationship can stand on its own, you wouldn't have to use these other characters or these other relationships as stepping stools, you know?
No.
And also, if you were secure about the relationship, you wouldn't have to ruin a friendship. Clark and Diana can't even be on the same uh, panel and the fans will have a fit. It's like, why? Because you feel that natural connection that they have, and it is a possibility of a romance, and you want to be so in denial to where they can't be on the same page together.
Exactly. So then we get to Wonder Woman Evolution, which it has a weird art style. However, it's it's an interesting story to say the least.
It's okay. It is a very interesting story with the execution kind of going sideways midway through. However, I think what I love about it is the story itself, though, and the potential, and also, yeah, this also gives an idea, Jared. So you can write that down. But this it's basically that Diana is, because of her divinity and because of who she is as, of heart, and that she is from Earth. She is the representative of Earth, and is it a world that is worthy to basically be saved? And I believe that there is in one issue where it's like, what about, Batman and Superman? Batman is human and all of that, but it's kind of like, no, Batman has his issues, basically. Um, Superman, Earth is his adoptive world, and he is of this world, because of the Kents and everything, but he's not truly of this world, he is from another world. So at at that moment, they wanted someone who was actually of Earth, and that is Diana. You know, Clark and Diana are the, again, with the refugee and the immigrant type, uh, with those perspectives. You have a chosen, and then you have the, where it's kind of like Diana chose to leave the mascara, to venture out in man's world and everything. Clark, it was basically chosen for him, you know. So that is why, like I said, they have those, their perspective is the same but different, and they have the same path, but it is still different in how to get to it. Um, and it's, I believe that that's where it kind of where it kind of distance,
Mhm.
because again, Diana is of Earth, literally, and but yet she is secluded from, man's world and everything because of knowing the history, the harshness of man's world. And so, because she's so innocent from that, she is that representative of that one soul who can basically change the world, not to be innocent, but to just give that better light. And then with Clark, he lived in it. Smallville, it was a town that was quiet, didn't really have any drama. But at the same time, as he grew up, he did see some of the harshness. And especially when Superman debuted, if you want to go with New 52 action origin, how he was tormented by the government, or just that whole thing of trying to get the people to trust him, you know, um, those certain things, aspects is still not as pure as Diana is, though,
Mhm.
So
Exactly.
that's basically why she is the better representation for Earth, because literally being made of Earth and being that, just that embodiment of the purest of innocence and the purest of the human life because of her earthly um, origin, That is what this story I think was trying to tell, but the execution again fell by the wayside. And then yeah, the art was a little bit peculiar,
Yeah, the way
and
Diana is drawn, I'm not entirely sold. She looks a little mannish.
yeah, and there's also a part where the Justice League is has someone prisoner, and Diana is like, no, let them go. And Clark is the way writers write him is basically he's lawfully good to where you know, how we want him is right is right, wrong is wrong. He doesn't choose, just completely one side. And he if he has to go against the government, he will go against the government. But in any other laws,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
with post crisis, it has pretty much ingrained that he can be sometimes a government stooge and that he will choose one side, even if he knows that it might be a some type of doubt, or it might be something that you know uh, he needs to fight more on. It's still like that. He has to have this upholding of the US government, some type of, American pride. And here it's sort of you got that here is that there was, and especially with it being another alien, because Superman is passing as human. He doesn't look alien, but in his DNA, he's Kryptonian. He is alien. And a lot of these writers refuse to acknowledge that yeah, he might look this certain way, but still DNA wise, genetic wise, he is alien. And for Clark to be written to judge other aliens as if he's not one, it 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 could rub you the wrong way. So in this story, that is something that explored too of how can Clark be judgmental of an alien when he is one as well. Um,
Exactly.
and it's just moments like that, and we also get a little bit of Diana's guilt with Vanessa. So another writer who has remembered basically how much Vanessa was so important to Diana in that way of a sisterly bond, not the weird obsession, one sided, unrequited love thing that Tom King is trying to force. It was that, homage to Perez. And
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and also you have at the end where Clark and Diana are in the fortress after the League or just Clark found her. She was stuck in the lab too, so that kind of took away the story too with her being in a lab or something. But just that ending that for Clark to say that Diana gives him hope and just that moment that they have, and also even at the beginning when Diana needed someone to talk to, or he was also her moral compass or just her conscience within the story as well. And he was just someone that she kept calling upon that she needed advice for, or she needed someone to comfort her or just to talk to throughout the story. And he was there at the end. So yeah, this story again, very much a Wonder Woman story. You still have Superman as a support, as her best friend, as the one that she goes to for understanding and to talk to have fun with, or just that moment of peace. Um, like I said, the story plot and what it was going for, you obviously understand it and you get it, but halfway through it does fall. But I will say that just the promise alone, I did like it.
Hmm. That's true. So then we get to, all right. So I read the entire run of
Yeah,
Brian Azzarello. Now, what I'm going to say here is that the story is not bad. Let me add to that. because, like we said earlier, because it's so separate from the DC universe, you can take it as a separate, like, Elseworlds thing, short of what happens to the Amazons in Hippolyta, because that's really all you gotta know. And sometimes, like when Orion showed up in the Superman book and Wonder Woman did, they kind of referenced that, but for the most part, it's so separate that I always say you can treat it like it's a different thing.
Exactly. This honestly is very much on its own, and that's what Azzarello wanted. Um, and I would say that again, that is why Sewell had a hard time with trying to put more focus on Wonder Woman's world like he wanted to, because he felt like, you know, Azzarello wasn't communicating, and what he wanted to do, he didn't want anything to interfere or, to be contradictory. He was trying to basically put things together. And but with the story, yeah, the Amazons, we already spoke on this about wanting them to be realistic in the mythology and stuff like that. Um, is it right for the Amazons, in DC? No,
I get what he was
but
going for,
yeah,
but the thing is, like, yes, it's mythologically accurate, but it's out of character for these Amazons.
exactly. It was just like, uh, and again, for it to be main continuity, it it just went too far. If you want the Amazons to, it's very much better, to be in Elseworlds. And that's what pretty much now you can enjoy it if you want to read it that way.
Mhm.
Um, Also, even Diana being the goddess of war, it wasn't Azzarello that did anything with it. He gave her the mantle and everything, gave her the god mode power, but it was Sewell who tried to give it a little bit more depth, in understanding of why and what she would do with being the goddess of war.
And then
And
Tomasi undermined that.
exactly. And you also have her trained by the god of war, which that would have been again a little bit more depth of Diana learned from the god of war. So now she's trying to use the mantle that she has to change it and to add, with all the battles that she's gone through, she doesn't like fighting. She want you What Azzarello should have done was again try to have that inner conflict for Diana as the warrior of peace. You know, the warrior side is what everyone emphasizes on as her being a warrior woman, of being the goddess of war. But then you have that peace part where Diana understands war to um, basically stop it, to put peace over that, and to find a better solution to not have wars and things like that. Um, the firstborn was also kind of a bore. It works, but
Mhm.
it doesn't. And then with the gods, that was also something that Rucka did. He had the gods, and they had personality. Why he changed them to like generic Disney animals in Rebirth, would never understand that.
Yeah.
But
So all of a sudden, Diana is Snow White.
yeah, but you know, you had that element where the gods even had like this um very much this dysfunctional family like any other family, and their human, quote unquote, human design, mortal designs, it worked, and very unique, except for Hades with the candlestick. I don't like that, but
Compare that to Absolute Hades, where it's the same. I mean, it's more of a ghost feel, but it definitely has that candlestick looking feeling, but it's done so much better.
yeah, he also looked like a kid, so it didn't
Mm,
really work.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's certain things in
Although
that
we did
run.
get Zeus with dreadlocks.
Zeus with dreadlocks was very. I like that. I
I'm
don't like.
sorry. That image right there is the most badass looking Zeus I have seen.
Yes, it's much better than Santa Claus Zeus
Mm-hmm.
because I just,
Santa Claus Zeus.
yeah, I don't like that. Zeus with the dreadlocks was very, yeah, a very good 10 out of 10 design. Yeah, so this story, I mean, it works for an Elseworlds, is very unique. This is also something that can be adapted as an Elseworld. Um, the Finches part of it, some of it is okay. Um, Donna's origin, I don't really agree with.
No,
I would
I
rather
hate
have
that.
had whatever Sewell, was planning for her. Of course, there was a speculation or, the idea that she might have been Clark and Diana's time displaced daughter, and she was supposed to be featured in the Superman and Wonder Woman book. But, of course, we wouldn't concretely know all the details or know that.
Charles, please come on the show so we can talk about that.
Yeah, unless it's we can find a way to have someone spill about it.
And of
um
course, in the Finch's era, we had what Britt affectionately refers to as the linebacker armor, where she has that suit. And the thing about it, so I asked David Finch about it when I saw him at a con, and what he told me is DC wanted it to be like they wanted to have Diana completely covered, and then the fans threw such a stink that DC was like, okay, undo it. That's why it only showed up in her book for like an arc.
yeah, well, it was also in uh the Tomasi run as well.
Around that,
For
because I think around that time period is when it was showing up, but like the fan base completely rejected it.
Yeah, and I mean also she does look like a linebacker. Like the shoulder pads was a little bit too much. It
And
was.
her having arm blades like Wolverine.
Yeah, that was a little bit too much. Like, okay, come on now. Um, and also the loincloth type thing, like it was less basically, like I said, it was too much. So
Mm-hmm.
you needed to simplify it a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree with you with that one. So then you get to okay. So we've actually talked about our runs, and I got to say now, Britt, before we move on to our reviews, which of these do you think is your favorite?
Of course, it is number one. It's going to always be Perez.
Yeah, of course. I figured it was going to be that one because, like, again, that's like the god tier Wonder Woman run where it expands on her world, but does so respectively. With me, yeah, it's that and Absolute because, again, because here's the thing. I would still love Absolute were it not for the Tom King Wonder Woman run, but I think Tom King's run being abysmal is a big boon to Absolute.
That's true. That's true. I mean, the fact that every time there's a complaint about King's Run, Absolute Wonder Woman pretty much rectifies it and does exactly what the fans want, that King refuses to do, or he basically ruins whatever the concept is.
I cannot get over how perfectly timed this always is. He wants to bring in characters no one gives a crap about, and then Kelly Thompson is, hey, Ferdinand!
Right. The next has to be Julia and
If
Vanessa.
she announces Julie and Vanessa, I am going to bust a gut. Just laughing so hard. I'm going to be like, oh, so this is now the main Wonder Woman run now. Okay, cool. I'm fine with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
But
because who
mhm.
cares about Diana telling bedtime stories to Trinity?
To her demon spawn baby, that probably won't be around that
Cabbage Patch
much.
Baby.
Yes,
Demon Spawn,
Cabbage
Cabbage Patch. What else do I call her? Chucky Baby.
God damn it. She certainly treats her mother like Chucky by punching her in the face.
Yep, that's exactly why she is a demon spawn Cabbage Patch Chucky Baby.
My God, that's such a good line. All right, speaking of Absolute, so a new Absolute Superman came out, and so this is basically showing Superman crashes on Earth, and I like how this issue starts off with him being lost in space for like months, pretty much, and it's like it kind of shows he deals with that trauma because he just lost his parents and the ship and everything like that. Then the ship crash lands, and I like how with this they explain how the Kents are able to hide the ship, and that the ship just becomes his suit because it's like it's the way the nanotech works. And I like how for the long time they can't understand I'm just gonna call him Clark, what Clark says, but he still helps them around the farm and all that.
And also, it just really solidifies what I've been saying about how the whole Clark being, or Cal being the son of scientists and being the son of farmers joins together, because you know this in that scene where Cal is fixing the tractor, he also says that he learned from Laura, which I also love about this run, is that it gives so much emphasis on Laura.
Yes.
Yeah, you know Jarrell and everything, but to give Laura so much emphasis, and for her to be like the smartest, basically, for her to be the lead. She created the suit. She created, all of these different things that are useful to Cal, that he remembered, basically for him to survive, and yeah, for him to simply fix a tractor. I mean, that is something that we've been saying all this time when we talk about giving respect for Laura or Krypton. It's not that hard. Clark, in current main continuity, he can wear the S on his chest. He can go to the fortress and all of that, but he doesn't have respect for his actual heritage. He uses the gifts, but he doesn't. He takes advantage of it because he doesn't respect it. He has like resentment for his Kryptonian, roots, for absolute Superman or New 52 Superman. It's all about balancing it out and putting it all together. It's never about separating it or choosing one over the other. It's, like I said, putting it all together. And that is what Absolute is doing, as the same as what New 52 was.
Exactly. And it's just and it's also the way that, like you said in the notes, this is making a political statement and stuff, but it's doing it in a way that it's not obnoxious, that you could just take this as like a regular superhero story. This is how you make political statements in books. You don't do it so overt, you make it general enough that if someone is reading for that, obviously they see it, but if they're not, if they just want to read a dope ass Superman story, they can. And luckily that's the way I approach this. I also love when the ship reforms around Superman, the way the art is, it looks like angels' wings.
Yes, in the fact that Martha, it she calls him an angel. That is, and well, going to present day, that we know that she has um Alzheimer's, but she remembers her angel. So that's really, honestly, that's really sweet.
Yeah, I like that. But you notice how Clark is in bed with a red blanket?
Yeah,
Yeah.
is that the cape? That's not the
No,
cape.
no, no, because remember, the cape is the ashes of Krypton.
Right, right, right.
But still, it's actually really cool. And I like, again, I swear, when the Peacemakers showed up, I said, if the Peacemakers kill the Kents, I'll have another reason to want to see that character murdered in a fire.
Yeah, I think that Peacemaker now, I guess they Gunn or whoever wanted him to be like the next Harley Quinn
They
type
wanted him
thing.
to be DC's Deadpool. That didn't work.
Yeah, I think that for that time, John Cena, he's a popular actor, wrestler. So of course he's going to have that hype. But after a while it gets old and the novelty, um goes away. And I really do think that that's what's happening with Peacemaker. Unless, the season two, whatever, I guess get hype. But it's so,
According to Gunn, season two is supposed to be more serious. So that's why I'm remotely interested.
oh, really?
Yeah, he said it's supposed to be a little different from season one. So, you know what? Just for that alone, I want to see what he means because obviously he's not going to tone down the jokes completely. But if he tones it down massively and makes it a little less like perverted, I'll be kind of more on board with that.
Yeah.
But speaking of Gunn, so the Superman preview came out, and I'm gonna tell you this. Here are the things I didn't like. The suit still looks like crap. And second off, the scream when Crypto jumps on, he goes, ah! I'm just like, that is the most cartoony thing ever. And I'm like, that went on for way too long.
The Tom and Jerry scream. Okay, so
I almost expected a Wilhelm scream.
so Crypto is obviously the highlight. He is, well, he's not part of it. He is the marketing of this movie. Um, and it really shows that within the context of a trailer, and it's always that trailers can be deceiving. When the first teaser trailer came out, it was very serious. It was very tried to have that emotional type feel to it, you know. And this scene with Crypto, it made it seem like that Crypto was, I don't know, maybe we expect Crypto to be whiny and for him to maybe lay down and cry, to seeing Cal battered and bruised. No, instead is a very um wanting to be comedic type thing where Crypto is unruly and he basically breaks more of Cal's bones and jumping all over him, being playful and wanting to play and not understanding the seriousness of what's going on. That takes away the emotional uh con context of the original, teaser trailer. And it shows that it might be parts of the movie where it's supposed to be something emotional and then it's undercut by Gunn trying to put in a gag or some type of joke, and that's I don't think that is the right way to go.
No,
Um,
it definitely isn't.
However, the fortress design is good. That's,
Hmm.
the way it came up and everything, and the symbol actually works on the fortress. Now, do I like the symbol on just on everything? No, not really, because it's recognizable to a certain extent because we know it as it's the Kingdom Come crest, just without the black outline and red. But uh it I don't know if it's just like really saying Superman, in a sense of to be recognizable, you know. Uh
Yeah, that's
it
true. I can kind of I can kind of agree with that.
Yeah, it works but then doesn't, at, at some points. However, on the fortress it does. I do like that the lighting and everything is very nice. Um the robots are that's good too with the robots. I would say that Gunn is definitely giving the male robot obviously doesn't want to have emotion, but the female robot is blushy and stuff when Cal talks to her, you know, that what Gunn would do. Yeah, the super suit,
It's
it's
I'm still not like. And plus, when you see that the underwear is a separate piece, I'm like, oh god, it literally is underwear now.
it's the Fortnite suit, as we said, and it does give plastically looky. It gives cheap. It does. The underwear, I would say that if it was attached, maybe it would work a little bit better. But knowing that it is kind of like you can tell that it's separated and everything, it I don't know. It doesn't really work because it does give a little bit of plastic. It gives plastic. Um, but again, he wants to go with the cartoony type vibe, and I guess the suit it gives that for him. It works, but then doesn't work. I would say the belt even more so is definitely plastic. Like
Hmm.
is definitely cheap. Um, and Gunn wants to have Silver Age silliness and that over the top, with the kaiju and everything like that. And, just this type of wackiness, even with crypto. But you have this post crisis bore. You have Clark's, we haven't, well, we see that he wants to have like the Donner type characterization for him, where he's like this big galoot type character, um, all-star inspired with the way he's characterized, and also the relationship with Lois. And then you have Krypton possibly uh being the dystopian or whatever that was in post-crisis of, just that whole desolate type world. Um, I I would say that if you're gonna go Silver Age pre-crisis, I would rather you go full on with that of, Clark being able to balance that out and and still be proud to be Cal, Superman, and instead of having to choose one over the other. And it feels like that's the way that, James is gonna do, is he's going to have him choose one over the other at some
Based
point.
upon the plot leaks, it looks like he's going full John Byrne.
Yeah. And that's what I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
why?
Does
Why?
that mean that Cornswear is going to kiss a 14-year-old?
Oh God, no.
You know why I had to ask that.
Please, no. Do not let Lana like de-age. No.
Who knows if Lana's even going to be in this? But it's like, so yeah, the robots I like, the fortress I really like. I like how it emerges out of the Arctic because that explains why no one's found it. Because you would think it would show up on a satellite eventually. What's that collection of ice cubes over there? Oh, okay, that's Superman's fortress. But because it like hides itself, for lack of a better term, I'm like, okay, that's actually really smart. So I like that. It's just again, even when he like, if you notice, the suit looks the best when he's not moving. When he actually bends his limbs, that's when it starts to look like it did in that suit reveal.
Yeah, it just like when you comparing it to the DCEU suit that was um very much attached to the body and and
It was
had,
basically
you know,
painted onto Cavill.
and it had the slickness. Yeah, he did walk a little stiff at some points, because it
Mhm.
was tight, but at the same time, it still gave that like I said, that slickness though, that you would
Actually,
think
it
that.
it was very post-crisis when you think about it, except it didn't have the underwear.
Well, yeah, because he didn't have the collar or anything, but
Mm-mm.
this suit is definitely Fortnite version of the new 52 suit.
Which
The
is really
collar,
stupid.
the collar, the underwear, and it was Cornsweat who wanted the underwear. So yeah, he wanted to go the classic route, and I mean, eh, if you want to go comic booky, and I mean, with Superman, he is supposed to be the man of tomorrow, but he's very much the man of yesterday and the man of stagnation as well, because it seems like he just cannot evolve at a certain point, and he has to stay at a certain, status quo, or just stick with this same type of plot line. You can have everything around him different, but as long as you have like these certain points that has to be the same, that really takes away from that evolving that's evolving around him, you know. So like I said, you want that silver age silliness, you want that modern type world, but yet you give us post-crisis bore that we've seen 1,000 times over.
And when he keeps saying that he wants to do something different that no one's ever done before, and I'm like, yeah, why don't you put Superman with Wonder Woman? That would be something different. But no, you can't do that because you're afraid of pissing off people.
I mean, it wouldn't really, because
It
like you
wouldn't
said,
like let's say it wouldn't piss people off, but they think it would piss people off.
I mean, MCU kind of did it. I mean, they didn't care. And as long as you're making money, we've seen Superman and Wonder Woman be marketed together, and obviously, uh, sales of whatever that is, whether it's the Gaultier perfume, his and her perfume, um, t-shirts, bags, comic books, um, basically whatever they are marketed together as, you know, um, people buy it. Where do you think the I am um his his Wonder Woman and I am her Superman, that tag, you know, that was on hoodies and t-shirts. People bought the new 52 shirts, people bought the new 52 statue, you know, all of this merch
I
that,
still need that statue. God
yeah,
damn it.
that has Superman and Wonder Woman together, or just any type of advertisement are, with them together, you know, with the, I mean, prime example here, we have an Instagram page with almost 70,000 followers of
This
couples.
show has been extremely popular.
Yes, wanting, to have them as a couple, or just, interested in their interaction. So why not just take that risk? And it's not going to be a risk that's going to make anything flop or fail, because obviously it wasn't a flop or fail in New 52. Even if people want to force that false narrative, it works, and who that is such a marketing like gold mine for couples and families who, even in on Halloween, the biggest pairings that they have are, yeah, the Disney pairings like Mickey and Minnie, or something like that, a salt and pepper shaker, costumes, or you know but as far as superheroes, couple costumes are number one, you will have Superman and Wonder Woman. Number two, Batman and Catwoman. Number three, unfortunately, but Joker and Harley.
Uh, yeah, that's the wrong costume to be cosplaying.
Right.
Is if that's one, if you're cosplaying as Joker and Harley, I may have to look into you.
Yeah, but if you, I mean, you glorify Harley and Joker, then why not have a much healthier relationship of showing the literal power couple, and not just in a physical sense, but actually of, you know importance, and equal importance. Having that is something unique and different.
Exactly. So before we log off, I want to tell you this, Britt. So for Weird Science, Jim and I reviewed the Batgirl book with Cassandra, and it's basically about her the first like six issues was about her relationship with Lady Shiva, her mother.
Hmm.
And so I brought this up on the show. This is yet another example of other creatives doing stuff that Tom King is trying to do, but doing it much better, because it's a mother-daughter relationship. and it's done so much more emotionally than King. And I'm like, yeah, this is how I know that King sucks, because you literally have relatively no-name writers doing what he's doing, but much better.
Because these writers, some of these writers actually put their experience, or they actually do the research, and to be respectful, and they love these characters. Tom King is the example of a writer, just as you've said multiple times, he has these plot points or plots on his computer, and he just throws in a character with it. So with Wonder Woman and dealing with Trinity, it was solely just wanting Big Barda and Mr. Miracle's kid to be babysat by the Super Sons. So he thought to take that idea and put it to Wonder Woman, regardless of that they don't even have a relationship with the Super Sons. Diana, she doesn't. We've never seen her actually interact with Damien and John. The only time Diana interacted with John was, again, being a mouthpiece for Rebirth. But that really didn't hold anything. And then, for the sake of Trinity, it was the absolute power team up with Diana and Damien. But still, even that, it was so contrived, and you still talk about Batman being a god or something, or having Diana out of the blue ask, could she be a good mother or something like that. It just didn't work, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that is King's problem, is that he isn't trying to understand these characters for who they are.
He's trying to
He
change them into what he wants them to be.
Right. He All he did was a Wikipedia search of maybe Wonder Woman past runs, and read the summary of it. He probably saw things that he didn't like of it, just like he's doing now. Perez had Steve as a brother figure. He wants Steve to be the center of Diana's world as a love interest. Um, it, Perez emphasized on mother-daughter relationships and sisterhood. King ruined Vanessa, wanting her to have this unrequited sick admiration and love for Diana, and then ruining the mother-daughter relationship with uh, Diana punching Hippolyta, or Trinity punching Diana.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's a good place to leave it. So, Britt, what stories do you have to tease us with?
Okay, so I have lots of chapter updates. I have chapter 3 of the no, sorry. See, lots of chapters. Chapter 2 of Odyssey. Um, Chapter 2 of the story that I have with Jid. And then I have chapter 4 of
There's so many stories.
Shelter. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Chapter 3. I was trying to think. And then other little one shots. I do have Twist of Fate. The last chapter is, I keep switching it up a little bit. It's almost done, but there's a parts where it is focused on Hippolyta and Laura as mothers of these two, you know, gifted children, and it will basically tie into like Mother's Day. So that is when that probably be will be done, uploaded by around Mother's Day with Twist of Fate, and that story will be ultimately completed, unless I want to have like an open ended to have a part 2. Um, then there's one shots that I have that are almost done. I will probably upload one or two sometime within the next week. And yeah, I'm really excited for us to share chapter 2 of Odyssey and start chapter 3, because that is where, this story really is, it's so emotional, and it's like, I guess because when we talk about it a lot, and knowing like the the scenes that we want to get to and how to get to it, and also just that emphasizing on putting Clark and Diana's relationship to the test and putting them in different scenarios. That's kind of like, again, they're multi-faceted characters with a multifaceted relationship. You can put them in any genre, you can put them in any situation in a sense, but still keep them as who they are. And so what we want to do is not have their relationship all like rainbows and, sunshines and, and everything like that. We want to test them in the right sense, and to have them going through a lot of drama to get to their happy ending. But it's not even a happy ending. It's just um it's the end of one chapter of their life to open up to another beginning part of their life. So yeah,
Exactly.
very excited to continue on with our Shelterverse and share it all.
Hell yeah. So on that, stay heroic, everyone. Remember, Lois Lane is Lois Lane. She belongs to General Zod. Steve Trevor, Never. He belongs 6 feet in the ground. Zoe's the max about for life. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.